What is up, large data bank fans? Happy Friday. Welcome back to the stream. I hope you guys are doing fantastic. I'm doing pretty good. I'm really digging this pump up music that I found. I can't stop with it. It's just the perfect thing to get me excited for a good day of streaming, you know? Maybe it's a little loud, but it's such a good song. God, okay. So what did I do today? Man, I had a weird day. I went to the Optimum store in person. I don't know if you guys have Optimum online in your location, but Optimum online, I'm not sure if this music really vibes with the other music. Thanks for the resub, Null Bitmap. 17 months, dude. Holy macaroni. Holy mackerel? Holy mackerel. But anyway, I went to the Optimum store. And why did I do that? It was to return the Optimum branded modem and router. And why did I do that? It's because I've skipped town, baby. No more Optimum. We're done with Optimum. We're done with $120 per month payments for bad internet. And you know what? We've switched to a new corporate overlord. That's right. Verizon. One corporation to another corporation. That's exactly how I roll. But guess how much I'm paying for my much better internet? $40 a month. God. Wow. How do they do it? How do they do it? How can Optimum Online exist, give such bad service, and pay so much when there's Verizon Fios kicking ass? You know what I mean? How is that possible? I'm talking about free installation. Wow, I sound like a hashtag SpawnCon ad kind of guy, but I swear I'm not. Nobody put me up to this. This is what happens when you get Verizon. A dude comes to your house and he perfectly strings this fiber cable along your house, you know, like really tidy and nice, drills a tiny little hole, and then he mounts the Verizon box nicely on the wall. Because guess what? Why do they do that? It's because it's now permanent infrastructure as part of your house. You're not renting it. They own it. It's living in your house. You never have to worry about it again. You don't have to pay for it. It's amazing. So I'm a big fan. How many Mbit? Well, I don't know. I didn't buy the gigabit plan. I could have bought the gigabit plan. I didn't think I needed the gigabit plan. I think I bought like a maybe 300 up, 300 down kind of plan. But for 400, I mean, $40 a month, like, damn, that's good. And it's like, yeah, it's solid. You know, it's solid. You can get gigabit. I didn't get it. Foob, what's going on? I think this music is called Gigawatt by Synthwave. No, Gigawatt by Zombie Hyperdrive. That's the name of the song. Safe, how's it going? A speed test for the fans. Speed test for the fans. Pratik, hello. Lisa, hello. I think it's unlimited, but I don't know. You guys want to do speedtest.net? We can try it. I don't think that the camera video is any better before or after the Verizon internet, but it could be. Maybe it's just psychosomatic. We're not too sure. Let's see what happens. All right. If this kills the stream, then I only have you guys to blame. Shows my IP address. Does that matter? Can people hack me with my IP address now? I don't know. I don't think that's a thing. That's like over. These are the new days. Get DDoSed. Well, anyway, this is a small group. You guys are not going to DDoS me, presumably. Anyway, so I don't know. I'm paying for 300 up, 300 down, 300 up, and I'm getting 300 down, 100 up. I think it's pretty good. But don't hack me, guys. No hacking. Pratik was using 50 megabytes remote location. Another provider dropped on my door with 150 megabits, half the price. Yeah, I think it's just, you know, there's competition these days. There's competition. There's people trying. There's capitalism's got some good things. People try to outcompete each other and get cheaper and better services. Hope that people switch to them, right? Anyway, that was my saga. I drove to the Optimum store and I dropped off my crap. That's like very suburban, right? I live in a city and yet I drove to the Optimum store. I have my friend's car. I've borrowed it. They're in France. So chilling around with a car, living that pretend car person life. It's pretty fun, I'm not gonna lie. I like having a car. It's convenient. You can go around, you can pick up friends, you can go do stuff. You gotta park it. It's a little annoying, but not too bad. Not too bad. What else happened this week? Anything good? I don't know. Oh, I played tennis. That was fun. Okay, check this out. Played tennis. I played tennis. Saw some coworkers in person. That was fun. And one of the coworkers I saw, just a guy, you know, I've met him a few times. I go home. I've reserved a tennis court. And me personally, I haven't played tennis in like 10 plus years. I don't know how to play tennis. I'm a noob. I reserve this court. I show up to the court on time, and who's there is that same coworker. Apparently this guy is a tennis guy. You know, he's playing tennis all the time. He plays with his son, you know? And so I show up and I see this guy. We say hello. What a coincidence. New York is like a small town. You know, people think of New York like it's all of Times Square, you know, times a million or something, but no, I wouldn't say so. I would say that you run into people more than you might think. Big place, but a small place at the same time. That's that. I played tennis. I was pretty bad at it, not gonna lie. I kind of hurt, like, I don't know how to do it anymore. You know, you have to hold it in a certain way. I'm treating the thing like a ping pong paddle. I want to take a lesson because it seems like something that's a lot, you're gonna enjoy it a lot more if you're good at it. And I definitely am not good at it at this point. But, and then, yeah, I don't know, some work stuff, planning stuff, talking with people stuff. And yeah, overall, pretty decent week. I think today on the stream, we're going to do a little more follow-up from last time. Maybe we'll hit up a random little issue that somebody was talking to me about earlier. Just something maybe easy-ish, fix that. But just random stuff today, probably. If you guys have stuff you want to look at on the database, always let me know. Love to pretend that I can do things on the fly. It's always fun. And yeah, I guess that's my intro for today. How are you, everybody? How is everybody doing? You guys having a good week? Good? Any weekend plans? Any things you're looking forward to? Any things you're dreading? Any humorous experiences you had over the week? Work travails, you know? Anything. Come at me with all of these ideas and thoughts. So here's what we're gonna do, you guys. Here's what we're gonna do. Here's what we're gonna do. We are going to check out what I've been looking at for the last couple weeks. Implicit record types for all tables. Remember this? Our old friend. And we're gonna look at doing this guy. Inconsistent behavior while subtracting intervals. I think this should be easy, but kind of fun. Filed by somebody who has a... What is this guy called again? Tiger guy from that one game. Crash Bandicoot. Filed by Crash Bandicoot himself. Love that. Yes, Crash freaking Bandicoot, my guys. Cute dog, yes, yes. Yeah, I got to meet Adrian. Who is works at Cockroach doing DevRel. You may have seen his streams on Corgi Catalog. He, in fact, does have a Corgi himself, so I got to meet Adrian and Adrian's Corgi, Atticus. Very cute dog. Very sweet dog. Pratik's been covering his backlog over the weekend due to laziness. Well, I'm sure you're not that lazy. If you're working over the weekend, you can't possibly be that lazy, right? I think that's how it goes. I think that's how it goes. If you're working on the weekend, you're not lazy. I think. Most of the time. Yeah, it checks out. It checks out. You know, I think we're going to do this first. This is going to be our little warm-up, right? Ease back into it. We're going to ease back into it. Using the powers of SQL built-ins. How did Crash Bandicoot fall so far as to be doing software development? It's a great question. This is kind of like corporate Crash, right? It's like Crash is running, Crash is going on those seals. You guys remember that thing where you're you're Crash Bandicoot and you jump on the little seal and you have to race against a boulder. Man, that was probably some of the best casual playthrough moments from Crash Bandicoot on the PlayStation. Definitely super fun. But this is kind of the, you know, Crash retired. Crash is not limber, spry. Crash is getting a little fat, and Crash is working on software now. It's kind of what it seems like to me. But anyway, that's neither here nor there, I would say. 9 to 5 Crash is a mortgage. Yeah, man. How the mighty have fallen. Absolutely. Let's go ahead and get our working environment into tip-top shape here. We're going to get into tip-top shape. We're going to remember how to do anything on the computer little by little. What is this problem about? Okay, so inconsistent behavior while subtracting intervals. This is exciting stuff. Okay, so let's try to reproduce this ourselves. People find a bug, people file a bug. You got to look at it, right? To reproduce, select now -2 hours. Let's try it out. Select now -2 hours. Could not parse 2 hours as a timestamp. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? Because we know now is a timestamp, and if you want to subtract something from a timestamp, it's better be an interval, right? That's how we do time math in SQL and in other languages probably too, is we've got moments and intervals and they can combine, but you can't really combine moments and moments, I guess, right? You can't say select now plus now. That's not a thing that exists, right? Even if we said that these were timestamps, we can't add timestamps to timestamps. We know that we can add timestamps to intervals, right? So if I said this would probably work. And so to me, what it says is that there's some issues with, like, this is actually working okay too. But when we get to subtraction, then we get into an issue for some reason. Why is that? If we cast this thing to an interval, then it works all right. So it kind of seems like what's happening is in this subtraction case, we're not like properly noticing enough that this is a interval type. And we were just like, it's probably going to be a timestamp. And we try to do that and it doesn't work because you can't subtract timestamps from timestamps. Or can you? Maybe the issue is that you can subtract timestamps from timestamps, but you can't add timestamps to timestamps, right? What if I say select now timestamp minus now timestamp minus 1 hour interval? Oh, is the issue that you can subtract timestamps from each other, but you can't add timestamps to each other? Right? We can't say now timestamp plus now timestamp. We already tried this. Ooh, I think I see the problem here. It's that we get confused. We're like, well, since we can subtract timestamps from timestamps, we're going to try to parse this guy as a timestamp. And we can't parse 2 hours as a timestamp, so then we could just give up instead of maybe potentially trying to also parse the timestamp as an interval. I don't think we have that kind of fallback logic set up. Rail. What is up? Happy Friday. What are the types of ways one can contribute to open source CockroachDB? That is a good question, Prime. I think that the easiest way to contribute to open source CockroachDB is as a programmer or a docs writer or as a general noticer of mistakes in words. I think that, let's say you're interested in just helping and you're a user of CockroachDB and you notice that there's something a little bit wrong with, you know, a documentation page or a README. I think all of those moments are good moments for you to say, you know, this is maybe my moment. This is my time to be a contributor. This is my time to jump onto the old GitHub and get my name in the list of people who have contributed to a thing. I think as a programmer, you should look at good first issue, right? We've talked about that before on the stream. This, in fact, is a good first issue, it claims, and I'm stealing it like a jerk, but that's all right, right? So you can always go to CockroachDB repo, click good first issue, and you should find a good list of good first issues. And all of these things are supposedly, theoretically, things that you can get into as a newer programmer, newer contributor to CockroachDB. But I think on top of that, these are technical things that developers will file and they could be tricky. I think we're always also interested in ways to correct things like our README or our documentation. Even if you actually go to CockroachDB documentation on the internet, there's a whole separate website for this, right? And it's kind of complicated looking website. It's got various stuff in it, right? Security, authentication. But I think the truth is that you can actually edit any of these as a contributor. If you find something that you find confusing, you can click contribute. Look at that. You can click edit this page. Look at that. And it'll pop up it'll actually pop up a GitHub in browser editor that allows you to propose a change and send a pull request. So I think that editing the docs, and this is probably true for many open source projects, it's easy to get into open source contribution if you have an eye for editing. And it's no exception for Cockroach. Yeah? Those are some ideas for you. Speaking of that, I've heard that there's this whole thing where you can open VS Code. Can't you open VS Code in these things now? How does that work? Is it you press dot? This is like insanity. Have you guys played with this yet? It's absolutely insane. You can open up GitHub and it gives you a fully fledged VS Code. And it's like in the browser, it's like the full deal. VS Code is just completely there. I guess this is the power of Electron, right? Most of the time people think of the power of Electron as like the opposite. It's like making a web page worse. But what about making an application live in a website? Oh, you can't edit? You can't edit? I just made an edit. So you're just saying if I save it, it just doesn't do anything. That's kind of too bad that it doesn't let you do a pull request from this, right? I'm sure they've got to be adding that like imminently, right? It's so close. All of the bits and pieces are here, and they just haven't put 2 and 2 together yet. But I'm sure they'll do it soon, right? Like you can do it from this window. You can send a pull request from this window. So why can't you send a pull request from this window? It'll happen 100%. God, this is impressive stuff though. Big kudos to GitHub, 100%. I mean, look at all this. It's really nuts. I can't even get over it. Anyway, web technology is very impressive these days. Advice for an engineering student that wants to become a data engineer but doesn't know how to start. A data engineer? Well, yeah, that's a good question. I've never really been a data engineer. So a data engineer is someone who works with, maintains, creates data pipelines, right? They're working on data cleaning and ETL and statistics jobs and stuff like that. I think that's the idea of data engineers is pipelines, data pipelines, analytics, business intelligence. I don't know how to get into that world, honestly. I really don't. Learn SQL. Do you know SQL? You want to learn SQL? Learn about ETL. Maybe try to get a job. I think with this stuff, a lot of it, you're going to learn it on the job. To be perfectly honest. I don't know though. I don't know. Maybe they teach data engineering in school these days. I'm not sure. I feel like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I don't have good advice on that. Sorry. So back to our problem though. We can add timestamps to each other and we can't really subtract. I can't really subtract them. So I guess I would consider myself, well, my job is engineering director right now. But I work, when I was doing IC, individual contributor stuff, I guess I was working on databases. I think data engineer is this sort of specialized thing that's really all about what I said, ETL pipelines and stuff. I don't think that database engineer is really like a title of a thing. An engineer who works on databases is a thing. But I think if that's what you're asking about, I think, well, I've got some DB books to study. But the key thing is that if you're newer in your career, you got to just get those fundamentals down, become a good programmer, become a good general purpose engineer. Anybody can work on databases. That's my message. That's the message of this stream. You too can work on databases. You can fumble through and figure it out, and you'll slowly learn this stuff. You don't have to be hyper specialized really to get into working on database stuff. Look at you, database. Yeah, exactly. I have an off-topic problem. If I have several SQL files divided into tables. How do I know the order to load them correctly without breaking foreign keys? That is a very good question, Slot Hoofer. And also welcome to the stream, by the way. I don't know if there is an easy answer to that. I mean, you need to like topo sort them by foreign key dependency order. And I don't actually know of a tool that does that, although it would be really nice, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be a really nice tool to have on the internet? A little paste in all of your schema and it's going to topo sort the schema order, the create table statements for the schema by foreign key. Kind of an interesting idea. Maybe somebody should build that. Would be a cool side project. Hi, Sora. Writing them on an A5 sheet and you're going crazy. I mean, you can imagine writing a little program for it, but it's kind of a lot of work to start from scratch to parse all of those, create tables and stuff like that. Yeah. Well, I think, look, here's what I'll say, is that you too can become a database engineer. There's an apocryphal story. Null Bitmap is referencing it. The apocryphal story goes, there's a few of us, Cockroach Labs employees, a few years ago. We're all hanging out. And we're all marveling at the fact that we're working on a database. And one guy goes, what does he say? He goes, look at us, just a bunch of database engineers. Something like that. I think that it's a stupid story. The point of the story is that you can end up working on a database. And if you can end up working on anything. If you look up to somebody in the industry, if you look up to any job, let's say you want to be a firefighter. Let's say you want to be a rocket scientist. Let's say you want to be a database engineer. I think that everybody who works on these jobs are just people. And you will find yourself, if you are interested in it, work hard on it, you can become that person. And you can marvel once you get there that, wow, how did I do this thing? How am I doing this thing that I was excited about when I was younger? I think it can happen. I think it can happen to you. This is my motivational story. Work hard, do your best, keep your sights focused on what you want to do, and you can get there. Man, do I have a career in motivational speaking? Is this my next move, you guys? What do you think? I think I need to improve my metaphors, but I think I could do it. Okay. Let's not get too distracted. Let's not get too distracted. We're talking about timestamp subtraction. That's the key here. That's the key. Let's go take a look at timestamp subtraction here. I think what this is all about is that if we look at this file here that defines all of our arithmetic operators, here's the minus section. In the minus section, there is an operator defined for when you subtract a timestamp from a timestamp and you get an interval, right? That makes sense. But if you go to the plus section, there is no equivalent. There's no timestamp plus timestamp. And something about this is making it so that we're having trouble inferring that we should be parsing an interval and not a timestamp. That's kind of our issue here. And I think what's going on, there's this whole business where the thing that's tricky about it is in this particular context, right? We don't have an annotation that tells us exactly what this type is. This could be anything, and we have to decide what we're going to try to parse it as. We call this constant upcasting. And I think that lives in here, maybe. And I think that if we take a look at what's going on, we might be able to figure out why this happens. So I search around for stirval. So what this looks like to the parser is that we see a little built-in and then a cast, then a minus, and then this thing is like, oh, we don't know what it is. So it's just a stirval. It's an untyped string constant. And you can see that there's a big list of the things that a string can become here. It can become a string or a bytes or a bool or an int. It can become a timestamp. It can become an interval, right? And Oh, you know, it's kind of interesting though. So resolve as type, resolve as type. We presumably call this resolve as type thing when we're ready to resolve this string 2 hours as a particular type. And we have some special cases for this. Scanned as bytes, I don't think we're going to get called here. That happens when we are doing something like, we have this X in front of it. That not work for whatever reason, select X. Do I need to like double quote this or something? So I don't even know how to use this X thing. I don't think this X thing is exactly relevant, to be honest. Okay, you can use it to scan bytes as literals or whatever. Okay, we'll ignore that. This case is not hit. Otherwise, we have some special cases for strings and for bytes. And then otherwise, we jump into some kind of general specific. We jump into some kind of default case here where we. And what's kind of weird is that it sort of seems like there's some bias towards times in this moment, which seems kind of random. But parse and require string. Oh, so this is the more important thing. This is where we are having all of the special cases for all of the different types. And we have one for interval, and we have one for timestamp. And I guess what's probably happening here is that we're getting type passed in as timestamp here, not interval. We can confirm that. Let's just do some good old printf debugging here to figure out what's actually going on. So we're going to say resolving our string as type, and we're going to print out our string. So expr.s, and we're also going to print out our type. And I'm guessing what we're going to see is that this thing is going to get resolved. It's going to be trying to be resolved as a timestamp and not as an interval. And the truth is that we don't exactly have the easiest way to get around this, right? Because in the case where we have multiple options, I think we only really, the point is that what can you subtract from a timestamp? A few different things. And I think we only pass in one of those things as the thing to resolve the string into. And I think that's probably what's biting us here. We don't really have a fallback mechanism for these casts, these like string casts. That is my guess.
The data bank's too big. I have to narrow down the search. How are you going to do that? By guessing.
Okay, so we're going to run our demo here. And we're going to get lots of prints, which is fun because we're presumably running all sorts of random queries in the background. We're going to run our select now minus 2 hours. Okay, let's try that again. And it looks like, okay, so what we get is just as I expected. We're trying to resolve our string twice for some reason, but both times we're trying to resolve it as a timestamp and not ever as an interval, which is definitely problematic. So I think the next step for us to think about here is, well, is there a way for us to have a fallback mechanism? Is this like a huge change to the type system that we shouldn't be thinking so casually about? I don't know, but I'm just sort of interested. This is how we have to explore things, right? We just poke around and maybe we can find out what's going on just by playing, right? We got to be playing around. I think what happens at this point is that we enter this whole type check recursive tree. So the way that we do type checking in Cockroach is we have an AST. Then we try to, for each of the expressions in a particular SQL statement, we try to run type check on it. But we always start with this desired type. And I think the tricky thing about overload resolution, which is what has to happen for something like minus, which is a binary operator that has many different types that it can support, is that we've got to kind of pick one, it seems like. And I'm thinking that the picking is giving us some trouble. How did programmers do programming without Git? That is a good question. Well, there was of course, version control systems that existed before Git, like Subversion and CVS. So I think version control is not exactly a new concept, but I think without version control, yes, it does seem tricky. Punch card programmer is always tricky. Zent, how's it going? Welcome to the stream. Why did I choose Go as a primary language? Well, I didn't choose the programming language for CockroachDB, but the reason that we picked Go for CockroachDB is kind of, we talk about it in this blog post, so you might be interested in that. Yeah. Hi, Calcor. Sharing code by email. Totally nuts. Totally insane, right? So unfortunately, we do have this really complicated code called overload resolution that we might have to delve into if we want to understand what's going on here. I'm not so happy about it because this code is hyper complicated, but you know, maybe that's fine. Maybe that is fine. So here we are in binary expr land, right? Binary expr because we have this minus, and we run type check overloaded exprs on something. We have a desired outcome. Is our desired outcome in this case going to always be timestamp? That's a question. The answer is yes, right? Timestamp minus timestamp is an interval. No. Ooh, it's sometimes going to be an interval and sometimes going to be a timestamp, isn't it? Yeah, so subtracting an interval from a timestamp gives you a timestamp, but subtracting a timestamp from a timestamp gives you an interval. So that's confusing. And of course, the database actually can't infer, can it? That's what's confusing about this whole thing. You can't infer which of those two modalities you're doing if you don't have the type of the right-hand side. And the weird thing about this expression is that you can kind of get the timestamp, the type of the right-hand side, but only after trying to parse the thing. And so I think there's a little bit of like backward business here that I don't know if we're quite equipped to handle. You know, you'd have to try to type check this thing. You'd notice that the right-hand side is actually constraining you further, and then you have to bubble that up somehow. I definitely don't know how possible that is for us. But out of curiosity, I'm going to print out some more stuff here. Type checking binary expr. We're going to print out the expr dot. Let's just print out the expr itself. Then we're going to print out the desired type. We jump into this type check overloaded exprs thing. What do we do here? We basically do a bunch of filters. We can't do overloads that don't have the right number of parameters. We don't do overloads which constants cannot become. Now this is interesting because this is very relevant to what we're looking at, right? This is filtering out. This theoretically should be filtering out the timestamp overload because we know that the right-hand side cannot become a timestamp. It can only become an interval. So what does this do? What this actually does is something a little bit different. It doesn't parse the thing yet. It just says, can a string become? Can a string become? And of course the answer is yes, because strings can become anything. So this is actually not so cool. This is a little bit uncool, I would say. I think that we kind of could be doing better here. We could be actually trying to see for any given particular constant which types it could become, which is a lot more advanced than what this is doing. Which we don't do that anywhere, which is it's a bit interesting, isn't it? I'm going to write a little note to myself here. To do Jordan, should we be checking for all possible constant resolution types, whether the constant can actually become that type given parsing? I think the answer is yes. I think the answer is absolutely yes. Yeah, oh man, this code. That's exactly how I feel about this thing. But I think this is kind of a crucial insight that we've missed this entire time, which is that we never actually check for each of the constants whether they can become. We only assume that any constant of a particular string or num-val type can become any of the associated types, which is just not true. So I think what happens then is that we sort of like, well, you know, we're filtering these things out, we're filtering these things out. And then we like have some preferred heuristic crap, which is probably where we're going wrong. Second heuristic, third heuristic. I think what happens is that we get this heuristic. We get heuristic. We said the second heuristic is to prefer candidates where all constants can become a homogeneous type if all resolvable expressions became one. This is 100% what's getting us, right? It's sort of saying I would prefer to use overloads where it's timestamp, timestamp, timestamp rather than timestamp overload, timestamp interval timestamp. Maybe. Oh god, there's something called a natural type as well. The natural constant type is the first resolved. The first thing in the list, which is, in this case is the string. That is sketchy, I would say. Wait a minute. At this point, hold on a minute. It looks like they've already thought of this, you guys. At this point, it's worth seeing if we have constants that can't actually parse as the type that can constant become claims they can. For example, every string literal will report that it can become an interval, but most string literals do not encode valid intervals. This may uncover some overloads with invalid type signatures. Oh man, brutal though. Brutal. Because I think we did reject the good overload already, honestly. I think it's missing something, then they've already thought about it. Yeah. It me. So that's I don't even know. I think what we need to do is print out all of the candidates at this point. I think that's the way that we're going to understand this stuff. Let's like try to print these things out. I don't know how it's going to look to print out an overload, but we'll try it. For I in range s dot overload idx's. A good example of the importance of commenting, right? Yeah, I agree. So we're going to print out, overload before constant can become pruning. And we're going to print out the return type, which I think will be enough to tell us. Well, we'll print out both things. We'll print out s.overloads. Let's extract this into a variable. We're going to print out the overload.params and then the overload.return type. This thing is upset because it's got a function type. Okay. That's annoying. Well, whatever. We'll just print it out and see what happens. Make build short. I love this package stream ingest because every time I look at it, it says to me streamingest, the most streamingest of all packages. Okay, so overload before constant can become pruning, left timestamp, right timestamp. So what happens is exactly what I thought, which is that we've pruned out the possibility for the overload to be timestamp comma interval. And I think it's the heuristic that came right before. I think it's, no, it's actually the second heuristic. The second heuristic. Okay, so let's actually try to prove this by saying, we'll just copy and paste this loop once, we'll do it twice more. So we're gonna say overload before homogeneous pruning, homogeneous type pruning. Then we're going to print out overload before overload natural type pruning. Kind of seems like it would be nice to have this debug printing available with like a verbosity flag or something like that, but or we could just keep adding it every time we need to debug this code, which is hopefully infrequent. hopefully. All right, let's do it. Let's do it. Okay, we run this thing, and what do we get? We see overload before homogeneous type pruning. We have all sorts of good stuff. We have timestamp, we have interval, we have timestamp, timestamp TZ, and we have timestamp, timestamp. And then as soon as we do our homogeneous type pruning, we get rid of those two possibilities, and we're left like a fish out of water with no possibility to prune this thing, to type this thing as an interval. So this is trouble. This is trouble, big trouble, big trouble. Let's write this up before we completely forget about it, because it's kind of complicated, right? It's like what the heck? This is kind of a what the heck issue, in my opinion. Okay, so the reason that this bug exists is a detail with our overload resolution algorithm. When trying to resolve which overload to pick for the minus operation in the example, now minus 5h, we don't have the type information yet for the right hand side of the expression, since it's an untyped string value. To try to figure out which overload to pick, we apply several heuristics, one of which is to remove any overloads that are not usable due to trying to remove any overloads that require a type or a constant in the expression that isn't actually parsable as this expression, parsable as that type, I guess I could say. Let's be a little bit more specific. So in the case of the minus overload with a timestamp on the left, we have three possibilities: timestamp minus timestamp, timestamp minus timestamp TZ, timestamp minus interval. You'd think that this heuristic would properly trim out the first two, since we can't parse 5h as a timestamp or a timestamp TZ. However, there's another heuristic that comes first, eliminating any overloads that don't have a homogeneous set of types, meaning we end up preferring the timestamp minus timestamp one in absence of a constraint on the return type, which is not constrained in this case, as we're just returning the thing and not passing it in to any other expression before we get to apply the can constant become heuristic. I think a fix for this might be to pull the can constant become heuristic higher up than the homogeneous set of types heuristic, but I'm not sure yet if this would break other things. Okay, so let's test our hypothesis. Let's just go ahead and YOLO this large comment and everything, which I think is basically all of this stuff. Unfortunately, it seems like we also use this all constants are homogeneous. Also, wait, quick sidebar, you guys. Does anybody know the difference between the words homogeneous and homogeneous? Are they just the same word spelled in British English versus American English? Or do they have different meanings? And are you allowed to pronounce either one as homogeneous or homogeneous? Like, what's the deal with that? If you see it spelled... Okay, thanks for chiming in, everybody. I guess my question is, if you see it spelled homogeneous, are you allowed to say homogeneous, which I prefer saying, or is that a bannable offense? I guess I can say whatever I want, but... I think the trouble, though, is that we do this stage before, and I don't quite get... Depends on how snooty you want to sound. I don't think I get the joke. It's me. But I think personally, I want to be as snooty as possible. So I guess that means I'm going to be saying homogeneous from now on. Yep, indeed. So the reason that we need this all constants are crap, and I keep having to say it. It's so annoying. I can't stop saying the word homogeneous. If we have the case where all constants are homogeneous, then what is this business that we're working on here? It's... it's a bad joke. I'm giving that a joke a bad out of bad. Okay, so we first attempt to use the information about the homogeneity of our constants collected by previous heuristic passes. If they're all... I hate having to continue saying this word after this conversation. Dude, this is so confusing. I actually don't even understand what we're doing here. It's kind of just we have a special case when all the types are the same. We're going to say that. We're going to say when all the constants are the same type. In the case where all the constants are the same type, then what do we do?
Computers hooked into over 1,000 data banks throughout the world.
Then we check something further. We check not only whether all of the constants are the same type, but we also check whether all of the overload parameters are the same type. And if the overload parameters are all the same type, with the same type that we picked out for the constants, then we get to do something different, which is called type checking the constants using this is kind of over my head. I'm confused. How come it says homogeneous type and not type? I think the reason is that we have picked out earlier a particular type that all of the inputs to these overloads are. And we actually make sure that they're all the same type if they are. And if they are, then we get to do some special stuff. That's kind of what's going on. In the case where everything's the same type, we get to do some special stuff. Something like that. Yes, these are HD. They're like the mass drop ones. HD6XX. So I think it kind of feels to me like this is what's kind of wrong, because we shouldn't really be allowed to filter out the other overloads just because we think that everybody can become a particular type. I think that's like, it's kind of overeager. Right? What we need to be able to do is wait until we can ensure that things really can become those types before we get rid of the ones that, yeah. So, I think we sort of want to pull this up. I think we basically want to pull this up here. Something like this. I think we just want to, yeah, I think we just want to pull this whole case up and forget the whole same typed section that we need to have this all constants are homogeneous variable for. I think this one does not need that special case. So I think we can just grab this whole guy and pull it all the way up on top of this block. We can stick it here. And then potentially what we can do is combine this. I think all right, well, we need it to be in the case where we have any constants at all. I think in this case, it's going to probably fix our problem, potentially, maybe. Potentially, maybe fix our problem. No, it's a little more subtle than this, unfortunately, because we actually need to involve this variable here, which is checking essentially. It's really confusing. It's checking, oh, I see what it's doing. It's actually checking for all of the expressions that do have a type. Maybe there's just a single type, which is the case in this one because there's only two arguments to this binary operator, and one of them has a resolve type and the other one doesn't. So this thing is going to be non-nil as soon as we come down here. And what this guy is saying is, if we have one of these homogeneous type variables set, which we do, is a timestamp, then we try to see if the second one can become that particular. Yeah, you know what I think? Actually, wait, we're gonna get rid of this change that I made, and instead what we're gonna do is we're gonna make this check a little bit smarter. So in the case where we do have a homogeneous type from before, we need a little bit, we need to use the stronger case of can constant become. I think what we need to do is we need to use the type constant as guy to make sure it really can become. It's not just like, can it kind of become? It needs to really become, which we can do that with this line here. It's very similar, but subtly different and importantly more correct, I think. So we're going to come over here and we're going to say, we're going to try to resolve the const expr as a type. So we're going to say, grab our const expr here. We're going to try to resolve it as the type. We're going to try to resolve it as our homogeneous type. By the way, hold on a minute. Speaking of this whole spelling issue, this one's spelled homogeneous and this one's spelled homogeneous. So it's not just me who's crazy, it's all of us. We're all in a terrible world of craziness. So we're going to say if error is not equal to nil, then we are going to do this. We're going to break. I think that this will do good things, maybe. It might make everything a little bit more expensive, but I don't know. Anyway, let's just see if it fixes our problem first. Okay, so we're going to try this again. Okay, so that does in fact fix the immediate issue. Oh, I should have done a poll. I should have done one of my polls to say, is this going to fix the issue? Yes or no. We didn't do that. It does fix the issue. But does it break many other things? I don't know. It very well might. What kind of tests could we write for this? Which kind of test could we run for this is a more important question. Let's go ahead and make a little mini commit to this. So fix overload res order. I'm going to add just the things that we want. You guys know about add-p, right? I love espousing the powers of add-p every time I stream. I think the change is really just a tiny little change. Just this little change. So we're going to say tree, don't abandon overloads. It's going to be improve overload resolution. Constant with constants, I guess. We're going to say when resolving overloads that have constant arguments, we previously threw away any overloads that we previously had a heuristic to throw away any overloads that didn't have homogeneously typed parameters if we hadn't finished, to throw away any overloads that didn't have any homogeneously typed parameters in ambiguous scenarios. However, this could be problematic in the case where we have constants that might be resolvable to a particular type, but can't actually parse into that particular type. This is problematic. We have a heuristic that comes after the homogeneous type heuristic that ensures that we only use overloads that are compatible with the actual constant values. But since it came afterwards, it was too late, and we might have thrown away the only valid overloads for a particular set of constants. Now we force ourselves to now we force an earlier check of can constant become, to make sure that we don't prematurely throw away the only valid overload for a particular overload and constant pair. Release note, SQL change, fix overload resolution for cases like select now minus 5 hours, where multiple binary operator overloads could apply, but the constant isn't parsable into the same type as the left-hand side on the overload. Okay, I'm sure this is like not at all comprehensible. It's complicated to describe this problem. But hey, what can I do? What's up, Fancy Yellow? Honestly, it felt like a bit of a letter to Einstein. Yes, you can definitely do pull requests to enter Hacktoberfest. 100%, we do participate in Hacktoberfest. We have a double the. Ah, you're right. Thank you. We do participate in Hacktoberfest, and you should definitely consider using CockroachDB as your Hacktoberfest contribution target. I think we'll probably put out some instructions for that soon. We did it last year, and it was quite a lot of fun. Hope you do it, though. Okay, so the truth is, though, that I think that probably some tests will fail here. So we're working on this issue. Commands edit project, working on resolving this issue for CockroachDB. Okay, so we're gonna run the test for this. We're gonna say, where are our type checking tests exactly? I guess we could just run all the tests in package SQL sem tree. Make test package equals package SQL sem tree. See what happens. Crab. Definitely crab. %100% crab only. CRDB less than crab. In a global ordering. Actually, I guess it's greater than crab in a global ordering. But what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? So we seem to pass our test, which is a little bit shocking, I would say. But I think the bigger problem with this isn't even tests passing. It's actually just about introducing a little bit of overhead into this overload resolution stuff. So we say mostly open source because it's all source available, but it isn't open source as defined by the open source OSI definition, because we use this business source license thing, which is sort of designed to prevent companies like Amazon from hosting the database and charging money for that, because we have our own competing, cloud hosted service for CockroachDB. It's pretty common if you look at other things like, I think Redis has a similar thing. If you look at BSL, business source license, you'll see a bunch of other projects doing similar things. But it's all sort of source available stuff. You can see all the source code online. Elastic, right? Yeah, so Elastic is weird because they kind of were victims of this problem, but then they switched their license. Isn't that what happened? Like, they got Amazon hosted Elastic and made a lot of money, and then Elastic was like, oh crap, we need to be able to do better. So they changed their license or something, right? Something like that. But it's also source available, just like Cockroach. Yeah. So question though is, does this make everything a lot slower and worse? I think the answer is kind of. I think I need to add some words to this. We need to further make sure that if we do have a homogeneous type, the constants can actually become that type. Otherwise, we'll accidentally pre-filter out some overloads that we can't actually use later. The Twitter link. Oh, I forgot to probably update that, huh? I feel like I have a bunch of outdated links to my old Twitter handle that I haven't updated. Like, I think my website probably has my old Twitter account too. So, didn't think about that. Thanks for the reminder. I'll fix that later. All right. Well, I don't know. I think this kind of makes sense. Let's go ahead and make a commit for it, shall we? We already made a commit. Let's make a pull request is what I meant to say. We'll see what other people think. I'm not totally sure that it's exactly as good as it can be, but we shall see. Note to reviewers. I do think that this is suboptimal since it means that we have to start resolving the constants using parsing. We have another occurrence where we need to parse a constant as a type in the code. But I'm not sure how to avoid doing it in this case either. Ideally, we'd minimize the number of calls to, what is it called? Resolve as type per constant. Okay, so that's that. I think next up we'll probably get back to our other PR, which was about this implicit record type stuff that we were working on last time. I'll give a quick overview of that in a second. Okay, so let me give an overview of what this is about. It's going to be exciting. So let's check out our branch for it. It's called implicit record types. We're going to rebase this. We are going to compile, and then we're going to give a little show off of what it's all about. What it's all about. What it's really all about is compatibility. It's also about making sure that we can have named types for tuples. A tuple in SQL is like a row or just a sequence of values in parentheses. But it's important to be able to have like strong typing for these tuples. And some people like to be able to name a particular tuple type by the table that generated it, if that makes sense. So that's what this thing is all about. Do I get PRs for issues from people outside of the organization? Yes, all the time. I think that there's like, you know, a pretty vibrant community of people contributing to CockroachDB who don't work at Cockroach Labs. We try to encourage it. And I think we do a pretty good job. Somebody sent us a really meaty PR recently called, where is this thing? Let me see if I can find it. Just as an example. Just as an example, this one. Okay, so this person, MCREC, MCREC is somebody who does not work at Cockroach. And whoever they are, they sent this really interesting PR that adds an optimizer rule that notices when there's a query that has min or max expressions that are over indexed columns. And it rewrites these queries to use subqueries so that you can avoid having to do a full scan over the entire table. And I think before we did this in a limited case when there's just one min or max expression in the particular query, but now I guess it sort of works with arbitrary numbers of min or max queries. So for example, I guess in these cases, it will convert these things into subqueries, run them one at a time, and then union them together, something like that. So that's an example. I think this is a fairly complicated PR. So we were really impressed by, if MCREC you're watching, thank you very much. We're impressed by this PR because this person had to learn quite a bit about how the optimizer works and wrote rules and figured out the right place to write tests and figured out all of our conventions and stuff like this. I don't know. They have some impressive skills, I think, for figuring out big code bases because their PR was in really good shape. It looked like something that could have come from somebody who worked at the company. But anyway, I'd say we get a lot of other PRs that are not quite as sophisticated as this, but still have really good fixes. Like, for example, our whole commenting system. You know, there's this feature in SQL called you can comment on table objects or column objects, type objects, any schema object. You can actually add a comment onto it. And that whole subsystem was contributed by somebody who doesn't work at the company. We also get a lot of little bug fixes, a lot of little built-ins, a lot of random things. So I would say overall, the answer is yes. That was a long-winded way of saying the answer is very much yes. And I hope that you too are inspired to consider contributing to the database. It's a good way to learn about databases, I think. And hopefully we're a friendly enough set of people that you can learn from getting code reviews and things like that. So if you ever have ideas, always you can feel free to DM me on Twitter, or you can join our community Slack as well to hang out with the other people who contributed. I'll give a link to the community Slack as well. It looks like this. You can join our community Slack and talk with other folks who are doing code contributions to the database. You did have a similar experience from someone you've never heard of, even with the documentation? You mean on your own open source project? You're going to contribute a query optimizer that uses deep learning just to do join orders. Nice. That's I'm sure that's a real thing, right? Like that is truly a real life thing that people have done in research, right? Because joint ordering is hard. Joint ordering is just the right kind of thing to do deep learning on. By the way, Safe, do you know much about AutoTune? Everyone's very curious. Like, what does AutoTune actually do? Everyone wants to know what kind of parameters that AutoTune actually adjusts. Maybe you know. AutoTune, do you guys know about AutoTune? AutoTune is this thing, AutoTune. It's an automatic database optimization program of some sort that is claiming to be very good, but we don't understand it. And we don't understand what kind of parameters it tweaks. It says that it watches and does machine learning and then it edits parameters or something, but we don't get it. We don't know what it's editing and we're interested. It'd be neat if there were some examples, you know? Okay, so back to this named tuple type per table though. Let's make a table, create table A int, B string, C decimal. So the thing with named tuple types is I can have an unnamed tuple type like this. But I can't. There's a way to, I always forget how this works. I think I can say like this. I don't remember how to do this. Anyway, so this is the tuple, and I think that there is actually a way, maybe like this. I forget how it works. Anyway, this is an anonymous tuple, and I think there's a way to sort of try to expand it, but it's not obvious. The thing is that in an anonymous tuple, there aren't labels for each of these values, and in fact, the types are sort of just like there because we've specified them here. You don't really have like a fully typed nice thing just with an anonymous tuple. What you can do is you can cast it after this PR has existed. You can cast it to the name of a table, and it's actually going to kind of nicely type it by the table. And once you've sort of done this, you can actually also like ask for all of the values of this tuple by expanding them with dot star. And you don't have to just use dot star. You can also use dot b to get just b out, or dot c to just get c out. So as soon as you sort of cast a tuple to a table, it gives you this anonymous type. It's not an anonymous type. It's a named type that has the columns of the table and the types of the table inside of the tuple. So it's kind of a neat little trick, and a bunch of different things use it. And we're adding it for basically for compatibility, because people like to use this thing for various reasons. I guess if I go like this, yeah, I can't expand an anonymous tuple type. Although maybe if I put two. My camera just said it overheated, so I think I need to turn my fan on. You were in CMU when Dana and Andy started it. As far as I understood it at the time, they were just using regression processes, and it tries to fine tune the configs and compare and picks the best one. Yeah, that's kind of like the sense that I get from what this thing is doing. But the thing is that I wish I had some examples of like, what were the kinds of configs that it's actually editing, right? I'm interested in that. Hey, MC, wow, speak of the devil, that's incredible. I feel, MC Rec, welcome to the stream. I imagine you heard me talking about how cool I thought your PR was, and then you decided to maybe sign up and say hello, but hello and welcome. And yeah, like I said, thanks so much for your contribution. It's really impressive. The whole team's impressed by what you've put together here. And thanks also, yeah, for saying hello. Yeah, so for AutoTune, I'm just interested to see an example, basically. You know, does it change storage parameters? Does it change memory buffer sizes? Does it change what? Who knows? Who knows? we're not really sure, but we're interested. We're interested, right? That's the kind of thing that you want to know as a database developer. You want to know what are the best practices from other databases, right? What are people thinking about? What are people doing? Does it make sense to think about adding, applying techniques from things like OtterTune to a database that you're working on? Or does it only make sense as an external process, right? That's kind of the magic of OtterTune, as I understand, is that it doesn't have to know too much about the particular database that it's working with, presumably. It's actually just doing completely context unaware. I mean, it's kind of crazy, right? Like, how does it know what parameters to start tuning? It can't just go crazy and like make random guesses, because then it would sort of disrupt your database in production. So there's a lot of questions that I have about OtterTune, and it does seem neat, but I don't understand it. That's my summary. Anyway, so with this name tuple type thing, if you don't name a particular tuple with columns, you get this weird kind of anonymous looking thing where you expand this out and you get question mark column for each of the columns, and you can't select them. Type tuple is not composite. This is kind of a weird error. This sort of seems like a false error, actually, because it's actually not the case that it's not composite. It's just it isn't named. The error should really say, cannot index into anonymous composite tuple type or something like that. The unknown part is what scares me. The unknown part of what OtterTune is doing, it definitely scares me too. Okay, so let me actually go ahead and see, where is this error message coming from? I'm actually curious. So if I search is not composite. So there's this new type is not composite error. And I guess we don't know too much outside of that, right? Oh, it's actually right here. Okay, so it kind of looks like, so I think this is what it is. A column access expr, I'm guessing, is yes. So a column access expr is a dot expression where we say we have a type and we're going to dot blah it to get the blah column out of the expression, right? And I think the idea here is that we're returning a bit of an imprecise error. If we try to column access expr on a left-hand side that doesn't have any tuple labels, then we say, well, the type is not composite, but that's not quite accurate. So I think what I'm going to do here is I'll just make a little quick fix just since I'm here. And I'm going to grab this case out, and I'm going to say if expr, I guess, what is the condition here? I don't exactly know what this expr.byIndex thing is, actually. This is saying byIndex if set indicates that the access is using a numeric column reference. Okay, so that's some weird internal thing that I think I'm going to ignore. So if it's not by index and the length of the resolved types tuple labels is equal to 0, we do have a problem, but it's a new kind of problem. It's actually going to be like, you know what? We should actually just see what Postgres returns. That's what we like to do for errors like this. Let's just make sure that we're being compatible. Let's say, what do I do when I say select 1, 2, 3, and then I try to index into this thing by A? Could not identify column A and record data type. That sounds like a fine error to copy. And it's 42703, which I think, I forget which one that is. That's undefined column. Okay, so we're gonna say return nil, pg error dot new f pg code dot undefined column. We're gonna say could not identify column blah, could not identify column blah as in record data type. Okay. So a simple little change. As far as I remember, they map unseen database workloads to previous workloads from which they can transfer experience and recommend settings.
It's an automated such as buffer pool sizes, caching policies, and other features. Tuning these knobs correctly based on the
Wow, I like the
database's
accent of
workload,
this lady.
data size, and hardware can greatly improve its performance and
It sounds very,
efficiency.
very smart.
The problem is that modern databases have hundreds of knobs. It is not practical for humans to know how to tune
Right.
all these knobs.
We
for a
can't tune
single
knobs because there are
database.
too many of
Use a
them.
tuning service and knob bases tuned to your digital software. Your database. The driver monitors the database's behavior using standard SQL commands to retrieve its metrics. Sources like Amazon's CloudWatch, like the service provider. On the last page, new configuration and installed it in the database in the same way. Your database. The driver monitors the database's behavior using standard SQL commands to retrieve its metrics. These metrics are internal counters that every database maintains, such as disk reads and writes. Autotune can also collect metrics from third-party sources, like Amazon's CloudWatch, for hardware information like CPU and memory storage. The driver stores your database's metrics and configuration in its internal repository. Autotune's compute engine then trains machine learning models to predict how your database's performance will change as its configuration knobs change. The compute engine's recommendation algorithm uses these models to generate new configurations. The driver then automatically installs the new configuration and monitors its effect. The driver continually monitors your database to make sure that it is always using the most optimal configuration. In this demonstration,
Well, so it doesn't explain very much, right? It just sort of says it does it. It says it does it, and you can trust me, is basically what it's saying. But you're right. It's got to have some kind of prior knowledge thing, like you're suggesting, Safe. They map unseen database workloads to previous workloads from which they could transfer experience. Who knows? It's pretty interesting stuff, though. So let me actually make a quick PR just for this small change here. You mentioned not knowing ahead of time what reasonable settings are, but you could pre-train the system on a bunch of fake workloads, then it would have a probability distribution of what values are more likely to be good. I guess what I don't really understand, though, is that, you know, knowing what I know about how long it takes to actually get a good sense of how a workload is performing, I don't really understand how it would be practical to do that, right? I mean, maybe I definitely don't know very much about deep learning, but wouldn't you have to know quite a lot about, you know, sensible and reasonable ranges for values and how the values interact, or be able to modify them and train different combinations of them very, very quickly? You know, or not train. You need like the training set, basically. Like how do you assemble a big enough training set given a couple of different workloads by modifying all these different hundreds of parameters or whatever in a reasonable amount of time, given how long it takes to actually test a workload under one of these configurations? You know, it might take a minute. And if you have hundreds of parameters, yeah, maybe you just let it run for a few months, right? Maybe I'm just not thinking on large enough timescales. Maybe I just need to think like, oh, maybe they've been actually training these models for months or like a year. Or I guess they could just also have a lot of, you know, spend a lot of money, do a lot of simultaneous experiments. Given the dynamic nature, we would need to reevaluate. Would we need to reevaluate? Yeah, it's interesting. Definitely interesting. Fix error message for a non-tuple. Oops, we definitely don't want that. Git stash pop. So I'm going to write a test in the eval package. I think we have these nice eval test data files somewhere. Test data, eval. Is there a tuple one or a record one? I'll just make a new file for tuple. Whoops. Okay, something about this is not working easily, which is irritating. Should probably just use the command line for this rather than be stubborn and try to make the IDE do the work for me, because this is taking way longer than it would if I just used the IDE. Okay, fine. Package SQL SAM tree test data eval, and we're gonna make a new one called tuple, and we're just gonna say eval, and we're gonna say, I think we just, how does this work? I think I just say 123 dot a, and I should expect an error from this. Let's see if that works. So we're gonna say make test package equals package SQL SAM tree tests equals test eval tuple. I think that would work maybe.